Hajime no Ippo. In the last video, we got to see Ippo face up for the first time against the featherweight champion Date. Though it was only a spar, Ippo was completely outmatched. My man's got knocked down like 6 times in that one sparring session, which was just serving as a tune-up for Date's actual fight, so he wasn't even going 100%. We really got to see how there's really levels to this boxing stuff, even after Ippo's already become a full boxer, already won Rookie of the Year, securing a spot in the top 10 rankings. For his first fight within the top 10, he fought against Okita, the 5th ranked fighter who won Rookie of the Year before Ippo did. He's a fighter from the same gym as Date. Date was his entire inspiration as to why he even got into boxing in the first place, so he mimicked his style as best he could. He was a carbon copy of Date. But when him and Ippo fought, he wasn't able to take Ippo down. Now, after having beaten the 5th ranked fighter in Japan, Ippo's in a much better spot to challenge Date as the number 1. But our story today doesn't start with Ippo. We're actually going over to see his rival, Miyata. The last time we got to see Miyata, he had met up with Ippo to say his goodbyes. He told him that he was gonna go ahead and travel to Thailand in order to train and fight there for a while. And the first thing that we get to see is the conclusion of his first fight there. Real quick, shout out to everybody showing love on the TikTok at CENSAY Anime. I appreciate y'all, bro. Salute. Said fight was pretty anticlimactic. There wasn't a knockout or anything flashy to the ending. It actually went down to the judge's decision. After patiently waiting, the ref reads out the result in front of the entire arena, and it turns out to be a draw. Everybody in Miyata's corner is surprised. The manager even walks up and starts grabbing and shaking the ref like, ain't no way that's the decision. Are they blind? Miyata's dad walks up and starts trying to reason with the ref, saying that Miyata's already had 2 knockdowns in his favor, and throughout the entire fight, he didn't have any points scored against him. There's no way that should have ended in a draw. It was undoubtedly a win in Miyata's favor. But as they're trying to talk with the ref and plead their case, the entire crowd starts booing them, basically telling them to act like men and listen to what the judges had to say. If it's a draw, it's a draw. You just gotta accept that. They're throwing all type of trash into the ring, starting to chant, telling Miyata and the rest of them to go back to Japan. Even with some of the trash hitting Miyata, causing him to bleed from his temple. Back in their room, they're explaining that this is something called hometown decision. It even happens in Japan, back at their home, when foreigners come and fight against them. It's just how it goes. The manager's upset because this was supposed to be Miyata's big comeback. He was supposed to have this win and bounce back from being upset in the rookie tournament, but it ended in a draw because of hometown decision. That's trash. Miyata's just sitting there in his corner thinking about Ippo and his brilliant knockout versus Okita, the 5th ranked boxer in Japan. Compared to himself, who had made all this fuss about coming to Thailand just to draw with a fighter who's not nearly as strong as Okita was, he's feeling lame for how this whole thing played out. Remembering his debut as this brilliant rookie prodigy, he's wondering where it all went wrong. We fast forward to see Miyata doing some training, and we get some context that it's been 2 months since they've arrived in Thailand. They've gotten used to a lot of the cultural stuff, but they're pointing out how the heat in Thailand is really something different. Miyata is out there running fully clothed in a jumpsuit, sweating, just going through it because of all this heat. But they're pointing out that managing his weight is still difficult. He's having trouble staying within the featherweight boundaries, and Pops is seriously considering moving him up a weight class into lightweight. He says it's always been the correct body type for Miyata's build, and being in featherweight, he has to diet and work like crazy. Looking at all the travelers visiting Thailand on vacation, he realizes how much Miyata really had to sacrifice in order to get to the point where he's at. Even the people around his age are nothing like him. They're completely different. At just the age of 18, he gave up everything, gave up all of his normal habits, normal actions that a regular 18-year-old would do in order to train and become stronger, aiming for the world title. Thinking about all that and all the work that he's had to put in, he realizes that he can't recall the last time that he's seen Miyata smile. The manager pulls up with the next fight application for Miyata, a guy named Jimmy Sisfar. He's got a record of 10-0 and 10 knockouts. He's completely undefeated. His dad already recognized the name because Jimmy Sisfar got a lot of buzz in the city. He's real popular. Apparently, he switched from Muay Thai to go into boxing, but his Muay Thai record was 32-0 with 32 knockouts. He's on his way to becoming this super mega star, and the manager's confused as to why somebody like him with such high status and reputation would come and approach Miyata, who just came off of a draw in his first fight in the country. But by the time he realized, Pops already knew. They only offered to fight Miyata so that it'd be an easy win for Jimmy and he could show off his strengths and pretty much showboat against Miyata. They're both extremely upset about it because that's just disrespectful in general. They don't know exactly how they should approach it. Pop says that what Miyata needs most right now is a win. And with that in mind, they decide not to tell Miyata about this fight request from Jimmy. The next thing that we see is Miyata training at what seems to be a Muay Thai training facility. They're all practicing, their kickboxing, all type of, Muay Thai stuff, but he's doing his thing on the punching bag. And as he finishes up his session and takes his gloves off to go get some rest, he sees these people talking about him. And as he looks over to the other side, this other guy's looking at him too. Everybody's got their eyes on him, and Miyata's like, if y'all got something to say, go ahead and say it. I'm tired of y'all just standing around looking. But he's saying all this in Japanese, and they don't really understand it very well. So he calls one of the guys who does know Japanese, Payo, to come and translate for him. Miyata starts pressing this dude. He got his hand up against the wall like he a high school bully running up on him. My man didn't even do nothing. He wasn't even talking crazy about him. But Payo explains that they're all talking bad and spreading rumors and whispering on about how the Japanese, quote unquote, aren't hungry enough. They don't want it bad enough. He said that in Thailand, when you have the opportunity to fight a big name boxer, you can earn a lot of money. And they're all making fun of the Japanese men for running away from that opportunity, being scared. Miyata's like, run away? Who ran away? Payo's like, I'm not saying this. I don't think you ran away. Honestly, I don't think you had much of a choice. When Jimmy confronts you, it's only natural not to fight him. He's undefeated. Miyata's mad confused, and we fast forward to him confronting his dad about it. He wants to know what's going on about this fight with Jimmy, but Pops don't want to say nothing. He's like, we gonna focus on your next match. And speaking of which, I've decided to push you up to junior lightweight. If we move classes up, it's gonna make your diet easier. You're gonna be able to utilize your real speed and power. There's no need to cling to this featherweight class anymore. But Miyata's not trying to hear that. He starts going on about when he first entered the boxing world, he was seen as this prodigy. He had all this high potential and so much high hopes for him, but all of a sudden, which he's talking about Ippo, got in the way of that. He says that if he dodges Ippo and goes around his first real opponent, his first real obstacle, then he's just gonna be forced to take the long way around for everything and avoid every type of problem. He says that he knows about Jimmy Sisfar. He knows that he's not somebody that he would typically be able to beat, but he doesn't want to run away from the dieting. He doesn't want to run away from any opponents, because if he does, then he might as well kiss his world championship wishes goodbye. But still, even after Miyata's speech, Pops isn't going to let him fight Jimmy. He just says that he outmatched him in his current condition way too much. Miyata bounces back, saying, it sounds like you're saying that I can't win, that it's impossible. But I thought you were the same one that told me that boxing was unpredictable. Pops tells him that he's being sent there on purpose to lose the match and let Jimmy pretty much just flex on you. He says, quote unquote, I'm not going to allow my son to fight in a match like that. Which honestly, I'm not a father. I don't got no kids. But putting myself in a father mentality, I wouldn't want my son fighting in that fight neither. It's disrespectful both ways, because if he goes in there and actually loses, they got their purpose out of it. But low key, if we run from it, it's even more disgrace to my son. So I don't know. That's they in a pickle, bro. He says he's not going to allow his son to fight in a fight like that. But Miyata says, I don't want to hear your opinion as my father. I want to hear your opinion as my trainer. So he's like, all right, bet. Your counter, the weapon that you've worked on your entire life, isn't going to work against him. And hearing this, Miyata just looks down. Pop says that he realized it during the fight against Mashiba. Miyata's punches are real sharp and defined. You could tell they put real training into him. But at the end of the day, they're still too light. It's just not enough to leave a lasting impact on the opponent's body. Not enough to land a knockout against real fighters with a lot of grit and determination. His punches just aren't enough, and unfortunately, it's something that he was born with, not something that's under his control. And as if that wasn't enough, the opponent who he's trying to fight, who he wants to fight so bad, Jimmy Sisfar, is an ex-Muay Thai fighter. He's not gonna fall from just a couple of counter punches. That's not gonna be it. Miyata just looks at him, saying that he knew all of this the entire time. He knows the truth about his punches, but he doesn't have a choice. He has to believe in them. If he loses faith in his fists, he'll never be able to fight again. He knows that it's selfish, but he will fight Jimmy, and it's not an option. Seeing the emotions that his son is going through, Pops tells the manager that it's the same thing that happened to me. Now remember, Pops is an ex-pro boxer. He was going crazy, ended up breaking his jaw in a fight, never fought again after that. Now he's focusing on Miyata. His father's failed career as a boxer is one of Miyata's biggest motivations, and apparently Pops sees that Miyata's going down the same path that he once did. He said that once he had become aware of his own limitations as a boxer back in the day, mind you, he didn't have a powerful punch. He didn't have a punch like Ippo. He was the same type of fighter as Miyata. Not powerful, but quick on his feet, good with the footwork, good counter punches. But once he figured out that he didn't have strong punches like that with enough power, his pride had made him even more eager to get into the ring. The less he felt like he could do it, the more he felt like he had to. Pop suspects that Miyata's going through all of these emotions right now, and the manager just says he hope it hasn't gotten that far yet. We cut over to a spar, and this dude just got completely knocked out. And of course, the culprit is Jimmy Sisfar. The manager's talking about Jimmy's success in kickboxing, and the only reason for him wanting to switch over to boxing was so that he can get more global recognition outside of Thailand. And he believes that this upcoming fight versus the foreigner Miyata should help him gaining said recognition. We fast forward to seeing Miyata doing some shadow boxing, and he's thinking that if his counter won't work, then he'll overwhelm him with speed and combos, putting out the most punches, and even in the worst case scenario, he'll win by points. But then he gets flashbacks to the last fight. He realizes that there's no way he's winning by points. At the very best case, he's gonna get a draw. He needs a knockout in order to win, but he just doesn't know how he's gonna get one. Out the side, Payo's looking at him, and Miyata's wondering what's the problem. He's gotten all this hostility from all these other people in the gym. He thinking Payo on the same timing, but he's like, oh no, it's nothing. Just your shadow boxing. It's so clean, so fluid. Your punches are so fast. I couldn't even see him, and I'm a boxer myself. I just had to stop and watch. Miyata's just looking down as there's somebody on his side praising him and his abilities, but he doesn't even have all that much faith in himself right now. He looks up and sees some kids doing some type of beginner training and imagines that Jimmy probably has similar beginnings to this. Payo explains that Jimmy's a fighter who gives all the kids of Thailand hopes and dreams, which makes Miyata feel even worse because now he's the bad guy going against the fan favorite. He already knew that, but hearing that being said once again, that don't help. But Payo's like, nah, you're not the bad guy. I mean, I'm here rooting for you right now. On top of that, you got a fan. And as he says that, Miyata realizes somebody's behind him watching him. But as he turns around, we see this little kid running off. Miyata ends up catching up, asking if he wanted something, when Payo pops out the back, calling him by his name and introducing him as his little brother, Chana, the fan that he was talking about. He's like, go ahead, tell Miyata what you said yesterday. Chana starts squirming around, getting all nervous and anxious, and isn't saying anything when Payo smacks him on the back of the head, telling him that he's taking too long. That's why you always getting bullied at school, man. Just talk. After just seeing how he's been acting for this past 10 seconds, Miyata can't believe it. He says he's got a friend back home who acts just like him. But he starts to explain that because of Miyata's counter, he now wants to be a boxer. Not a Muay Thai fighter like the rest of the kids his age, but after seeing his fight not too long ago, it had inspired him to uptake boxing. He says, if it's possible, I want to learn how to throw counters just like you. Miyata's surprised, and Payo explains that he was an instant fan after he had seen his last fight. And Chana's like, please, I want to see more of your counters. But Miyata just puts his hand on his shoulder, saying, I'm sorry. As he just begins to walk off, he's thinking to himself that his counter isn't worthy. Quote unquote, my counter isn't that great of a punch. Maybe if I had something that was actually amazing, then I could accept what you're saying. But then he stops for a second. He's thinking, a punch better than the punch that he has right now. He's wondering if he's been too conceited, too confident, too cocky this entire time, thinking that his own counterpunch was complete and nothing could be superior. Just toying with the idea in his brain, he's thinking of a newer, refined counter that would have unmatched accuracy while also being heavy. With this punch still being as sharp as ever, he's thinking of how to create the counter to surpass all counters. The next thing we see is Miyata chilling in the sauna. He's there and it looks like he's been there for a minute just thinking about this punch that he needs. Over in the other room, the manager and Pops is talking about Jimmy. They're strategizing about his finishing move, being his side-to-side hooks, and honestly, his infighting is amazing. He's just a good overall orthodox fighter. He's never been knocked down before, and the manager's stressing out, realizing that the more he finds out about Jimmy, the more his strengths stand out. He can't seem to find any weaknesses. Suddenly, Pops realizes that he hasn't seen Miyata in a little minute. He asks the manager where he's at, and he lets him know that he's in the sauna. But he says in the sauna? He hasn't came out yet? And starts dashing over there. As they make it in there, he's passed out on the ground. And they're shaking him back and forth, screaming his name. Miyata just gets up like, oh, did I drift off? As he stands up and walks out. He goes over to the scale and still he hasn't made the weight requirements yet. The two are back in the room saying that he doesn't eat, he doesn't drink, he works out constantly and still hasn't been able to drop the weight. He's just not going to have enough stamina to fight Jimmy for 10 rounds. His only hope at winning would be an early knockout, but they already had the discussion that his counterpunch, his signature move, isn't going to work on Jimmy. So now they kind of had no way out. Looking back outside, it's pouring right now. And we see Chana running with an umbrella saying, man, if Miyata catches a cold now, this is the worst possible timing. So he's bringing this umbrella for him. He hears some people speaking Japanese out the side, and as he looks over, he sees it's some tourists. It's these 4 pretty young people, about the same age as Miyata. They're all talking about, man, we're soaked, man. I can't believe it's raining no more. We can't go to the beach. Woo, woo, woo. And we look over to the side, seeing Miyata training. We kind of get to see these 2 paths that each individual chose. Miyata having chosen the path of the hard work, the struggle, the determination versus the regular workload and being able to enjoy the luxuries that he will be able to enjoy at his age. But he's out here doing some shadow boxing, practicing his punches when he notices Chana out the side, realizing that he had brought this umbrella for him. I don't know why, but he hit this little pose as he turns around, saying that he appreciates the thought, appreciating the kind effort, but there's no real point in using an umbrella in this type of rain. As Miyata's just standing there, Chana walks up to the side and asks him, Miyata, you never smile, do you? As he looks down at him, he's saying that all the other Japanese people who come to Thailand look like they're having so much fun. They're going to the beach, cracking jokes, enjoying their time, but ever since I noticed you've got here, I haven't seen you smile, not once. All the other fighters at the gym are saying that there's no way you could beat Jimmy because you're Japanese and the Japanese just aren't hungry enough. They don't work hard enough. But you don't drink water, you don't even eat your food. You're living a more hungry lifestyle than most people from here. He says that boxers here get into the ring because they want money, but he personally believes that Japanese boxers are different. He wants to know why Miyata's getting into the ring, why Miyata's constantly putting in all this work when all it does is make him suffer. He wonders if he's even having fun, cause how he carries himself and the expression that's on his face all day doesn't say so at all. Miyata's just staring down at him and starts to walk away. Chana realizes that he might have said a little bit too much. He might have overstepped his boundaries and he apologizes. He just says that Miyata looks like he was in so much pain. He wants to go home because he believes that Miyata's gonna catch a cold if he stays out here. And once again, Miyata says thanks and he appreciates the thought and that he didn't realize it, but he guesses it's true. He really doesn't smile. But he says still, even if he's the only one that really thinks this way, he believes in something. He believes that for boxers, there's a specific time for smiling that only a boxer could experience, and he just hasn't gotten there yet. Miyata recalls that Chana said he wanted to see an amazing counterpunch. Chana agrees, saying, yeah, I do want to see it, as Miyata just looks on, continuing to think. We fast forward to a new day, and he's training with Payo as he just gets knocked straight to the ground. He's gassed, out of breath, and the manager's like, man, that's another one. He's been off his game for a while now. This Jimmy fight's coming up in a few days, and he's in worse shape than ever. Miyata stands back up, saying that he's not done. He wants to continue fighting with Payo. He's not sure because he can tell Miyata's in bad shape, but Miyata's begging him. The bell rings and Payo goes for another punch, and even the manager realizes that this is the perfect time for a counter, but Miyata gets beamed with the right. He gets sent back to the ropes and charges in, but his attempt was unsuccessful. The manager's like, all right, I gotta stop the fight. I can't watch this no more. I gotta call it off. But as he's running up to go and stop it, they trade punches, but Miyata's the only one to fall. The manager darts into the ring, separating them two, saying, Payo, bro, that's enough. Stop. Even though my mans was just here chilling after the round, like this is what Miyata was asking for, to continue fighting. I don't know why he getting up all on me talking about stop, but whatever. The manager's over here checking on Miyata like, you good? While Payo just walks off. Pops is looking at Payo and he's over there leaning, slouching on this pillar, wondering what's wrong. He barely took any clean hits, but something left a lasting impression on his body, completely different from Miyata's punches before. Pops just looks at him, thinking that Miyata's getting closer. He's getting closer to that answer that he's been looking for, the counter that'll surpass all counters. Even Miyata knows that he's almost there. Just a little more training and he'll get to it, but we don't get to see any more training. We fast forward to the day of the fight inside the arena. Miraculously, Miyata managed to pass the weight test, but the manager's calling out that everything is looking perfect for Jimmy right now. It looks like everything's lining up for him. He looks to be in peak condition, physically and mentally. And Pops looks up at him like, bro, what is you talking about? It's not what we need to hear right now. But he didn't even say a word. He got all that through with just that one look. The manager's like, my fault, as they just leave the room. At this point, Miyata's trying to tie his shoes, but he can't even do them right. They keep slouching over, not how he normally gets them. He's getting mad at himself, thinking that he's so pathetic he can't even concentrate properly right before the fight. He done won and left Japan, made this whole big scene, but he's gonna come back with nothing to show for it except for a bunch of L's. And on top of that, he's recalling the betting odds for the fight tonight is 30-1 against him. So you bet $10 on Miyata and he wins, you'll get like 300, but if you bet 10 on Jimmy, you'll get like 30 cents or something like that. Miyata's trying to think of boxers who have had to fight their way up like this, who were given pathetic ratings like he's been given now. He's going through it, struggling. He's got his whole morale messed up, thinking that he's really the perfect loser for this Jimmy fight. But then he realized something that he had forgotten. He personally knows a boxer who would fight his hardest even when his ratings were bad, even worse than what Miyata's are right now. He's getting flashbacks to Ippo, wondering if this was the kind of pressure that he had felt before his fights. But regardless, he overcame them every time. Miyata locks in, and we fast forward to the beginning of the fight. They're giving Jimmy his introduction and everybody's cheering. The whole crowd is in his favor. Once they switch to Miyata's introduction, they're all booing, but he's not worried about it. He's just sitting there locked in as they kick the seconds out. Jimmy's got the whole crowd chanting his name, but he's not playing too much into it. He's pretty focused in himself. Miyata's ready for whatever's gonna go on and happen as the bell rings and the fight begins. But before we even get to see any fighting, we cut outside to seeing Chana and Payo running towards the stadium. They're running at max speed. Chana's worrying about missing the match because Payo had to be late. He was working. The match has already started. Chana's mad nervous and he's asking Payo if he thinks Miyata's gonna win. Payo looks off like, man, I don't know, Jimmy's real powerful. But he thinks to himself that something's been real different about Miyata lately, something different about his counter, remembering that feeling that he had felt after that previous spar. Chana stops like, wait, Payo, whose side are you really on? Payo's like, of course, I'm on Miyata's side. And to prove it, I bet this entire month's rent on him. Chana's like, ain't no way, this man is insane. Payo says, we gonna cheer for Miyata even if it kills us. Fast forward to the time that they get there, and it's become a complete one-sided match in favor of Jimmy. The announcers are realizing that Miyata's just about at his limit. Jimmy's not so easy to fight against. Jimmy begins to approach, throwing punches at Miyata as he's weaving in and out, trying to throw these little jabs right back at him, but Jimmy bounces right back with heavy punches to his guard. Miyata's stuck on defense, and Chana and Payo just can't believe what they're seeing right now. Miyata's being drove into a corner. Jimmy's moving forward and forward and forward. Finally, he lands a right, sending Miyata straight to the ground. The announcer is hyped. He's calling out that Miyata finally failed. He was able to endure by focusing solely on defense, but Jimmy's just too strong. It's not even looking like Miyata could stand back up. Payo can't believe that Miyata's taking a beating like this. He's never seen this before. He didn't realize how big the gap between him and Jimmy was. The refs in the ring are counting up, and all we can hear is the crowd showing love to Jimmy. They think that Miyata's probably going to be able to get back up, but they're ready for his real finishing move to put the work in on Miyata. Miyata's real upset with himself. He's calling himself pathetic. He had subconsciously reverted back into his old style that he was originally trained in, and it had no effect on Jimmy. He's realizing just how strong Jimmy is, and that's only giving him proof, making him realize that to win this fight, he has to use his new style or he's not going to be able to win. As he gets up, there's 20 seconds remaining in the third round. As the ref calls for them to continue, Miyata takes up a new stance and everybody's shocked. His pops is like, he's really going to do it. He's finally going to use the jolt counter. Now the jolt counter is pretty much a counter punch where he shifts all of his weight into that front leg while throwing the punch. So he uses the weight of his entire body into the punch. It'll help compensate for the lack of power in his original counter punch, but it's a double-edged sword. While it does give Miyata the destructive power that he needs, if he fails, all of that destructive power gets added onto the opponent's punch and thrown right back in his face. He says that only God knows what's going to happen, but either way, it's not going to be pretty. Jimmy's looking at it, realizing that it's practically an infighter pose. He's wondering if Miyata's really trying to duke it out with him up close, and if he is, he's not really worried. He just charges in, starting to throw punches as Miyata's doing his thing and baits him into throwing a right hook, which is Jimmy's finishing move. This is exactly what Miyata was waiting for, and even his dad recognizes that he played it perfectly. Miyata lunges in with all of his weight, trying to use this jolt counter in order to gain enough power and knock Jimmy out, but he doesn't make it in time and is sent flying back by Jimmy's hook. The crowd starts going insane. The trainers on the side are completely shocked. Payo and Chana are even more shocked as Jimmy just looks down at him and walks back into his corner. This is Miyata's second down, and as the ref begins to count up, he's not even twitching. The manager's realizing that he must have got a concussion. He's really in danger right now. He's telling Pops that he's gonna throw in the towel, but Pops tells him to wait. You can even tell by his face that he's mad nervous, but he doesn't want to give up just yet. He's wondering if this is really the limit to Miyata's boxing. He's wondering if his son is going to be broken down by the same jolt counter that broke him. As we see Miyata's vision getting blurry, he just looks like he's in terrible condition, and we're getting flashbacks to all different types of moments. We're seeing him training with his dad as a kid, promising that he's going to be strong just like him, cutting in between his dad telling him that he's not going to be strong enough to fight Jimmy, over to a flashback of Miyata's dad having his career ended while trying to use the same move that Miyata just tried to pull off right now. As we go through all of these emotions, it's all type of things going through Miyata's head. He's even thinking back to his conversation with Ippo, where he was explaining his original motivations and his hunger to get up to the top for his dad's sake and believing in his dad's style of boxing, but mainly for his own sake, as all of this kind of centers in his mind. Miyata's vision focuses back in and he begins to move. The ref is still counting up and Jimmy's surprised that Miyata's even able to get up right now. Just before the ref is able to get up to 10, Miyata gets back on 2. Everybody's surprised that he was able to get back up, but especially Jimmy. He knows that he felt a heavy impact from that punch, but as the ref's looking at him, he notices that Miyata's eyes aren't even focused for real. It doesn't seem like he's fully conscious. He's about to make the decision that he can't go on, but Miyata just starts walking towards the center of the ring. Ref is like, Miyata, wait, I think we're gonna call it off. But then he looks back at him with this glare in his eyes. The ref seeing this look, calls for the round to continue, but as soon as it does, the bell rings again and round 3 is done for. Pops pulls up and carries him back to the corner as they start touching him up a little bit. He's telling Miyata that he got fortunate for not taking as much damage as he really should have for failing that counter. He's telling him that he can't go on if he doesn't tighten up his guard, but Miyata's not even looking at him. He's just looking off. Pops is wondering what's up. Like, you can't hear me? But as we get a view of Miyata, he's like, no, I can hear you just fine. I can even hear the rain. Pops saying, the rain? You can't hear the rain over all these spectators. But as he takes a closer look at him, we notice that Miyata's ears are bleeding. As we get a look into Miyata's mind, we see that it's static all around him. He says it's raining. I can hear it all. As we figure out that he's got damage to his eardrums. He's in real bad shape right now, and the manager knows it. He took a bad hit and got sent flying into the rope, so he's in a state of half consciousness right now. He's begging Pops to call the fight off. They need to take him to the hospital ASAP, but Pop starts game planning with them. He's telling him not to worry about the follow-up after the joke counter. He just has to make sure that his dive in is perfectly timed, and if he manages to land a hit, Jimmy will fall 100%. Now that he's taken a hit from Jimmy, he's been able to experience his timing firsthand. He tells him that there's only 2 important factors in order to make a counter work. He says timing and heart. Miyata's locked in, Pops is locked in, and the manager's looking at them both like they're crazy. Pops tells him to get in the ring and give it everything he's got, as Miyata just nods. We get to hear that, of course, the crowd is still all in Jimmy's favor, but in his corner, they're realizing that they were kind of mistaken about Japanese boxers and the stereotype that they're not very hungry. They don't work real hard for their wins. They can both see that that's clearly not the case right now. Jimmy's pointing out that this is the first boxer he's encountered with so much fighting spirit in his entire career. Remember, most of the fighters from Thailand see these fights as opportunities to get money, popularity, fame, woo woo woo, but that's not what Miyata's going for, which is why he's different from all of Jimmy's other opponents. His trainer tells him to, at the very least, show him respect for having this much fighting spirit and fight him at full strength. Jimmy says that's already what he was planning to do as the 4th round starts. We see them both walk towards the center. The crowd's going crazy, and we see the manager wondering why Pops didn't stop him from going in. He can't believe that he encouraged the use of that counter again. The counter that had just put him in such bad condition. If he fails that counter again, it could potentially be life-threatening. Pop starts explaining that it was a long time ago, back when he was the champion of Pacific Asia. He had used that same counter, but then he corrects himself, saying that he didn't actually use it. He had tried, but he had failed. He explains that the new counter that his son had came up with, the counter to surpass all counters, is the very punch, the very counter that had ended his own personal career. When it had originally happened, Miyata was there watching from start to finish. He seen it all go down. He saw his own dad's jaw break into a million pieces as blood was everywhere. Young Miyata was there to see it all, and Pop says it's just too ironic that when he found himself faced in front of that same wall, he came up with the same answer. Now, he says it's his turn to watch his son risk it all and put his career on the line. Pass or fail, he's got to sit there and watch, just as Miyata did. In the ring, the crowd's going crazy for Jimmy, and he's throwing swings on and on as Miyata's just dodging by a hair. Chana and Payo are in the crowd, realizing how dangerous this is, but as an experienced boxer, Payo's impressed with Miyata's defensive intuition. Even with damage to his feet, we know that his footwork isn't on point. He's still able to dodge Jimmy's punches so fluidly. Jimmy's getting upset as he's missing all these punches and begins to throw a hard right when Miyata starts readying up his counter but realizes that he had messed up the timing. He's able to dodge by just a hair and realizes that he's not in the condition to follow these punches with his eyes. He has to start his counter at the exact same time that Jimmy starts his own punch if he wants to get the timer right. Jimmy's surprised that he could still do all these dodges and maneuvers in the condition that he's in right now, and decides to go for a body blow, which actually worked perfectly. After the body blow, he follows up with a straight right, and Miyata gets hit by that one too. As he falls back against the ropes, we see him in this view of all static around him, once again. He's saying that all of his limbs are getting heavy. He's pretty much tweaking out right now when he starts getting flashbacks to his conversation with Chana. When he was asking him why he boxes, he doesn't seem to be having much fun at all. He's trying to remember his own motivations, and amongst the sea of static, he sees a silhouette. After seeing this silhouette, he locks right back in, dodging Jimmy's punch and responding with the uppercut of his own. But Jimmy dodges that one. As Jimmy steps back from the dodge, Miyata accidentally starts to fall forward. He lost his footing, he lost his balance, and Jimmy's about to take advantage of it, throwing all of his power into one punch. But he had begun his jolt counter, leaning into it and using all of his weight behind it to enhance his destructive power as much as he can. As he lands it, sending Jimmy straight towards the mat. The trainers are completely shocked. Payo and Chana don't know what to say, but most of all, the crowd doesn't know how to react. After the knockdown, the ref holds him back from throwing any more punches, and Pops points out that that was a perfect jolt counter. He couldn't have played it any better. Miyata hangs onto the rope and is completely gassed. As the ref starts to count up, the crowd starts chanting for Jimmy to get up. They're starting to encourage him more and more, but Miyata knows that he played that counter perfectly. The angle, the timing, the impact, everything was spot on. He's saying there's no way that Jimmy could possibly get back up. If he is able to, then he's done for. He doesn't have anything left to give. He had summed up his entire boxing career into that one punch. And as he turns around to see if Jimmy is getting up, he sees a towel being thrown in from Jimmy's trainers. There on the ground, after taking the counter, Jimmy hasn't even twitched once. We just see blood splattered everywhere. The announcers called that it's a major upset. Jimmy Sisfar has officially been defeated by Miyata as he scores a flawless victory via a reversal knockout. Chana and Payo start going crazy. Not only did they see their mans just win, but you know they want some crazy money out of it too. Pops and the manager, I gotta figure out his name. I don't know his name, bro. Pops and bro runs up on him, and while he's in the corner, they're giving him praise as they look at the crowd who's completely stunned. They're noticing that things probably not gonna be too friendly after this upset, so we gotta get Miyata out of here ASAP. As they're carrying him out, we see China trying to fight through the crowd and get up there as everybody's just there focused on Miyata. They're wondering how, in the condition that he's in, he could barely walk, he was able to beat their star, Jimmy. Some people out there saying that even though they lost money on the bets, they got to see a really amazing fight, and as Miyata's walking out, everybody begins to clap. Pops is realizing that maybe Thailand isn't as bad of a place as when he had first gotten a taste of it, as China finally makes it through, yelling at Miyata saying congratulations. As Miyata keeps walking, Chana realizes that he probably couldn't hear him, but Miyata puts his hand up, turns around to Chana, and smiles. The next thing we see is Miyata at the airport. Payo ended up dropping him off in the brand new car that he got after winning that bet, and Chana walks up to him, disappointed that Miyata's leaving. Miyata crouches down, needing to tell him something that he should always remember. He says there's 2 ingredients you need to know to throw the perfect counter: timing and heart.